The Dawnbreaker's Journey, the observation lounge of the Starliner Dawnbreaker, offered a view that never failed to inspire awe. Earth hung in the darkness like a sapphire suspended in velvet, its oceans and continents slowly rotating as the massive vessel prepared for departure. Dr. Ilara Chun stood at the reinforced viewport, her reflection ghosting over the planet's surface. To any observer, she appeared lost in thought, perhaps contemplating the 3-week journey ahead to Titan's mining colonies. In truth, her mind catalogued every detail of her surroundings. The nervous businessman adjusting his collar repeatedly, the elderly woman clutching her grandson's hand, the maintenance crew member whose gait suggested military training despite his civilian uniform. Ilara had learned long ago that survival meant seeing what others overlooked. First time to the outer colonies? A warm voice asked beside her. Ilara turned to find a man in his early 30s, his dark hair slightly disheveled, eyes the color of Earth's oceans below. He held 2 glasses of Martian wine, offering one with an easy smile that suggested he did this often. "Actually, I'm returning," Ilara replied, accepting the glass with a polite nod. "Xenobiology conference on Europa." "And you?" "Kale Draven," he introduced himself, clinking his glass gently against hers. "Mineral trader. I spend more time in ships than on solid ground these days." His smile broadened, though the company on this particular voyage is already proving exceptional. Despite herself, Ilara felt warmth rise to her cheeks. There was something genuine in his manner, a charm that didn't feel rehearsed. "Ilara Chun, and that's quite a line, Mr. Draven." "Kale, please." "And it's not a line if it's true." He gestured toward the viewport. "Besides, anyone who appreciates a view like this instead of rushing to their cabin deserves recognition." Their conversation flowed naturally as the Dawnbreaker completed its departure sequence. Kale spoke of rare minerals found in asteroid fields, his enthusiasm infectious. Ilara shared carefully edited stories of her research, omitting the classified portions that formed the bulk of her actual work. She found herself laughing at his jokes, noticing the way his eyes crinkled at the corners, the unconscious grace in his movements. The boarding announcement chimed through the lounge. Passengers filed past toward their assigned cabins, a diverse stream of humanity and purpose. Ilara's trained eye caught them immediately. 5 individuals boarding separately through different entrances. A woman in a maintenance uniform. A businessman with a titanium briefcase. A young couple who never quite looked at each other. A station worker whose credentials seemed too new. Different backgrounds, different appearances, but identical neural implants barely visible behind their left ears. The same controlled breathing patterns. The way they positioned themselves to monitor all exits without appearing to do so. "Something wrong?" Kale asked, noticing her distraction. Ilara relaxed her shoulders, offering a soft smile. "Just tired. Long conference." She met his gaze, allowing herself a moment of honest connection. "Though this conversation has been the highlight of my day." Kale's expression shifted, something deeper than flirtation crossing his features. "Mine too," he said quietly. "My cabin is on D-deck. Perhaps we could have dinner tomorrow?" The Dawnbreaker chef supposedly trained on the lunar culinary stations. "I'd like that," Ilara heard herself say. It was impulsive, potentially compromising. Also entirely true. They exchanged codes before parting ways. As Ilara made her way to her cabin, she passed the woman in the maintenance uniform, close enough to note the military-grade weapon poorly concealed beneath her toolkit. The businessman's briefcase emitted a faint electromagnetic signature inconsistent with standard electronics. The young couple moved with the synchronized precision of trained operatives. Ilara settled into her cabin, unpacking minimal belongings. Her actual equipment remained hidden in compartments designed to fool even advanced scanners. She withdrew a book on Titan's ecosystem. a genuine interest that provided perfect cover, and began to read. But her mind remained on two things: the raiders who would inevitably reveal themselves once the ship reached deep space, and the mineral trader whose smile had, for just a moment, made her forget why she was really here. The Dawnbreaker's engines hummed as they engaged full thrust, pushing away from Earth toward the distant jewel of Saturn and its mysterious moons. In her cabin, Elara Chun closed her eyes and began the mental preparation she'd learned years ago. Tomorrow would bring danger. Tonight, she allowed herself to remember Kale's smile and feel something she'd almost forgotten: anticipation for what morning might bring beyond the mission ahead. Shadows in the void 20 hours into the journey, the Dawnbreaker cruised through the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, its autopilot navigating the sparse debris field with practiced ease. Most passengers had settled into the rhythm of space travel, sleeping through artificial night cycles, dining in the Grand Hall, or losing themselves in virtual entertainment. Elara had maintained her cover flawlessly, attending a lecture on Titan's methane lakes, playing chess with an elderly engineer in the recreation lounge, and sharing 2 more conversations with Kale that left her both energized and conflicted. He'd told her about growing up on a transport freighter, his father's death in a cargo accident, his determination to make something better of himself. She'd found herself sharing truths she rarely voiced: her loneliness, the weight of secrets, the desire for something real in a life built on deception. Their hands had touched over dinner, fingers intertwining briefly before professional instinct made her pull away. The hurt in his eyes had cut deeper than she'd expected out now. As the ship's lights dimmed for second sleep cycle, Elara sat in her cabin, reviewing surveillance footage she'd tapped through her hidden equipment. The 5 suspicious passengers had made no obvious moves, but their patterns remained consistent. They were waiting for something. The ship's intercom crackled with Captain Joran Vallis's steady voice. "Attention all passengers. We're experiencing minor navigational recalibration. Please remain in your cabins for the next 30 minutes. Thank you for your cooperation." Elara's blood went cold. That wasn't the captain's standard phrasing. She grabbed her concealed weapon, a compact pulse disruptor disguised as a medical injector, and moved toward her door. The corridor outside erupted in chaos before she reached it. "Nobody move." The businessman's voice boomed through the halls, amplified by sonic equipment. His titanium briefcase lay open, revealing an arsenal of weapons. "This vessel is now under our control. Resist and people die." Screams echoed through the Dawnbreaker. Passengers stumbled from their cabins in confusion and terror. The 5 raiders had positioned themselves at strategic points throughout the ship, herding people toward the central atrium with brutal efficiency. Elara assessed the situation rapidly. The leader, a scarred man she now recognized as Torvin Crost, wanted for attacks on colonial supply lines, commanded the operation with military precision. His 4 crew members moved like extensions of his will. Passengers were separated into groups, families torn apart. Protests met with warning shots that scorched the walls. "Elara." Kale's voice cut through the noise. He pushed through the crowd toward her, his face pale but determined. "Stay behind me." "Kale, don't," she began. But he'd already positioned himself between her and the nearest raider, the young woman in the maintenance uniform. "Move along," the woman ordered, gesturing with her weapon toward the atrium. "She's terrified," Kale said, his voice steady despite the lie. "Give her a moment." The raider's eyes narrowed, but before she could respond, Torvin's voice boomed again. "Anyone not in the atrium in 60 seconds will be shot. No exceptions." The crowd surged forward. In the press of bodies, Kale's hand found Elara's, squeezing once. She squeezed back, a silent communication passing between them. His palm was warm, his grip protective yet respectful. Despite everything, Despite the danger and her training, she didn't want to let go. The atrium was the ship's heart, a 3-story open space designed for social gatherings. Now it became a prison. Nearly 200 passengers crowded together, fear thick in the recycled air. Children cried. Adults comforted each other or stood frozen in shock. Torvin stood on the upper level, surveying his captives like a general reviewing troops. Your cooperation ensures your survival. The Dawnbreaker will divert to new coordinates. Authorities have been contacted with our demands. Behave, and in 48 hours, you'll continue your journey. Misbehave. He aimed his weapon at a young couple clutching each other nearby. And I demonstrate the consequences. The woman sobbed, burying her face in her partner's shoulder. The man held her tighter, his eyes meeting Torvin's with desperate pleading. Don't, Elara said quietly, the word escaping before she could stop it. Torvin's gaze snapped to her. For a long moment, he studied her face. Elara kept her expression neutral, frightened, but not paralyzed, exactly what an ordinary passenger would show. Mercy, Torvin said, lowering his weapon slightly. How refreshing. He gestured to his crew. Begin the sorting. Scientists and engineers to the left. Everyone else to the right. In the chaos of reorganization, Kale pulled Elara behind a decorative pillar, his body shielding hers from view. Listen, he whispered urgently, his face inches from hers. I know you're not just a scientist. Her heart stopped. What? The way you move. The way you observe them boarding. I've spent enough time around dangerous people to recognize someone who knows how to handle themselves. His eyes searched hers. I won't blow your cover, whatever it is. But let me help. Before she could respond, before training could override instinct, Elara closed the distance between them. Their lips met in a kiss born of adrenaline and truth, brief but fierce. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. Stay close, she whispered. And trust me. A raider's shout interrupted them. You two, move. They rejoined the crowd, but everything had changed. Kale knew. And somehow, impossibly, that made Elara feel less alone than she had in years. On the bridge, Captain Vallis watched his surveillance screens, his jaw tight. He'd already triggered silent alarms, sent coded distress signals. Help was coming. Unveiling truths, the raiders had converted the ship's cargo bay into a makeshift detention area for the scientists and engineers, separating them from the general passenger population. Elara and Kale found themselves pressed against the cold metal wall among 30 other professionals, watched by 2 armed guards who rotated every hour with mechanical precision. Hours crawled past. The ship's engines hummed with a different pitch. They'd changed course, heading toward coordinates unknown. Elara used the time to observe, to calculate, to plan. The raiders were professionals, but they were also nervous. Their eyes darted too often to their communicators. They whispered in codes she couldn't quite hear, but recognized as military protocols. This wasn't just a hijacking. This was something larger. I need the facilities, Kale announced loudly, drawing the guards' attention. Unless you want me to demonstrate the limitations of human biology right here. One guard, the station worker with the 2 new credentials, gestured impatiently. Make it quick. She goes with you. He pointed at Elara. Can't have you plotting alone. They were escorted to the cargo bay's small washroom facility, a cramped space designed for crew during long inventory shifts. The moment the door sealed, Kale turned to Elara, his voice dropping to barely a whisper. Tell me the truth. All of it. Elara studied his face, the determination in his eyes, the set of his jaw. She'd made a career of reading people, and everything in his expression told her he could handle what she was about to reveal. More than that, she realized she wanted him to know. Intelligence division, she said quietly. Counter-terrorism. I've been tracking this cell for 8 months. They call themselves the Void Collective ex-military operatives who believe the colonial expansion is unsustainable. They plan to cripple infrastructure, force humanity back to the inner planets. Kale absorbed this, nodding slowly. The attacks on the supply convoys. The sabotage at Europa Station last quarter. That was them? Yes, and this hijacking is just the beginning. If they succeed, thousands will die when the colonies run out of essential supplies. She paused, then made her decision. Your turn. You said you recognized dangerous people. Why? A shadow crossed Kale's face. Because I used to be one of them. Smuggler, before I cleaned up my act. Ran contraband through the asteroid belt, bribed port officials, worked with people who made these raiders look like amateurs. He met her eyes. 3 years ago, I witnessed a smuggling job go wrong. Civilians died because the cargo we carried was unstable. I turned evidence, entered rehabilitation, started over. But the skills, they don't go away. Why tell me this? Alara asked, though she already knew. Because you kissed me, Kale said simply. And because I haven't felt anything real in 3 years. Not until I met you. He reached for her hand, interlacing their fingers. If we're going to die on this ship, I want to do it honestly. Ilara's throat tightened. She'd trained herself to compartmentalize emotions, to never let personal feelings compromise a mission. But Kale's confession, his vulnerability, shattered those walls like they were made of glass. We're not going to die, she said firmly. She pulled him closer, their foreheads touching. But I need your help. Your smuggling knowledge, you know how to move through ships undetected. Ventilation systems, maintenance crawlways, emergency protocols. Every inch, Kale confirmed. These luxury liners are built on the same framework as cargo haulers. I can navigate them blind. And help me reach the bridge. Captain Vallis needs to know what they're really planning. She pulled back slightly, her hand moving to cup his face. After this is over, when we're safe, we need to have a real conversation about what happens next. I'd like that, Kale whispered. Then, with a tenderness that made her breath catch, he kissed her. This wasn't the desperate kiss from before. This was slow, deliberate, full of promise. His hands settled at her waist, hers slid to his shoulders, and for 30 seconds, the universe contracted to just the two of them. A sharp knock on the door shattered the moment. Time's up. They separated, composing themselves. Ilara tucked a small device she'd concealed in her sleeve into Kale's pocket. Communicator. Frequency Epsilon 7. When I make my move, get to the ventilation access in Section C. I'll meet you there. Back in the cargo bay, Alara noticed something crucial. The raider guarding the western exit kept glancing at his wrist display, his jaw clenched. When Torvin's voice came through his earpiece, audible only as a tinny whisper, the man's face paled. She lip-read his subvocalized response. Understood. 30 minutes. Her blood ran cold. Whatever the Void Collective had planned, it was accelerating. She caught Kale's eye across the bay, gave an almost imperceptible nod. He stretched, seemingly casual, then stumbled deliberately into another passenger. In the resulting commotion, apologies, helping hands, shuffling bodies, Alara slipped behind a cargo container. Her fingers found the ventilation grate. 3 seconds to remove it silently. 5 seconds to pull herself inside. 10 seconds before anyone noticed she was gone. The countdown had begun. In the confined metal tunnel, Alara pulled out her concealed equipment. A pulse disruptor, a tactical blade, an emergency beacon, and her determination to save everyone on this ship, including the man who'd somehow become more than just another person to protect. She began crawling toward the bridge, her heart pounding with adrenaline and something else entirely. Hope. The uprising the ventilation shaft was barely wide enough for Ilara's frame, the metal cold against her palms as she crawled through the darkness. Her earpiece crackled softly Kale's voice, barely audible. "I'm in position at Section C guards, just changed rotation. You've got maybe 10 minutes before they realize you're missing." "Copy," Ilara whispered. "Stay ready." She emerged into a maintenance junction, dropping silently onto the service catwalk. The bridge lay 2 levels above, accessible through an emergency ladder that crew used during system failures. She'd almost reached it when footsteps echoed below. "Confirmed the charges are set," a voice said. "The young woman from the maintenance uniform. Torvin wants them armed in 20 minutes. And the passengers?" "Another raider, the businessman. Collateral damage. Once we transmit proof of the Dawnbreaker's destruction, the colonies will panic. Supply ships will stop running. Infrastructure collapses within weeks." Ilara's stomach dropped. They weren't planning to ransom the ship. They were planning to destroy it with everyone aboard, making it look like a catastrophic systems failure. The perfect terrorist statement. She had to move now. Ilara descended swiftly, her blade already in hand. The maintenance woman never heard her coming. A precise strike to the nerve cluster at the neck, and the raider crumpled. Ilara caught her before she hit the deck, lowering her silently. She stripped the woman's weapon and comm unit, then triggered her own beacon. "Kale, they've planted explosives. This whole ship is rigged to blow. I need you to cause a distraction in the atrium. Something big. How big are we talking?" "Big enough that every raider comes running." A pause. "Then, I really hope we survive this, because I have plans for our next date. Despite everything," Ilara smiled. "Me too. On my mark. 3.2.1. Now." In the atrium, Kale stood on a table and shouted at the top of his lungs. "Fire in the passenger quarters. Section D is burning." Panic erupted instantly. Passengers screamed, surged toward exits. The guards tried to restore order, shouting contradictory commands. In the chaos, Kale helped elderly passengers toward safety while covertly opening emergency supply lockers, distributing breathing masks and fire suppression equipment to anyone nearby. One raider, the station worker, grabbed Kale roughly. "What did you do?" "Nothing. I saw smoke. Kale's words cut off as the man raised his weapon. The shot never came. Ilara dropped from the catwalk above, driving both feet into the raider's shoulders. He crashed to the deck, his weapon skittering away. She rolled, came up in a combat stance, and delivered a devastating strike to his temple. He collapsed, unconscious. "Behind you!" Kale shouted "ELAR," a spun. The businessman raider fired, but she'd already moved, using a passenger as visual cover, not a shield, never that, but strategic positioning. She returned fire with the stolen weapon, striking his leg. He went down screaming. "Get everyone to the emergency pods." Ilara commanded, her voice carrying authority that made people obey instinctively. "This ship is rigged with explosives. Move." Captain Vallis's voice boomed through the intercom. He'd regained control of communications. "All passengers, evacuate to emergency pod stations. This is not a drill. Crew, initiate evacuation protocol 7. Move." Torvin appeared on the upper level, his face twisted with rage. "You!" He recognized Ilara instantly, though she'd never met him directly. Intelligence photos, perhaps, or leaked databases. "The agent who's been hunting us." "Sterling's protege." Torvin crossed, Ilara replied calmly, positioning herself between him and the evacuating passengers. "Former special forces, dishonorably discharged for weapons trafficking." "You're done." "We're all done." Torvin laughed, a sound devoid of humor. Those charges go off in 12 minutes. No one's getting off this ship alive. He raised his weapon toward the crowd of fleeing passengers. Toward a family struggling with 2 small children. Toward elderly engineers helping each other move. Toward Cale, who'd positioned himself to help a woman in a wheelchair. Alara moved without thinking. She threw herself across the space, tackling Torvin just as he fired. The shot went wild, scorching the ceiling. They hit the deck hard, struggling for control of his weapon. Torvin was strong, enhanced with military-grade implants. He threw Alara off, sending her crashing into a support pillar. Pain exploded through her shoulder, but she rolled with the impact, coming up with her blade drawn. "Cale, get them out," she shouted. "Not without you." Cale's voice was desperate, but he continued shepherding passengers toward the pods. Torn between duty and desire, Torvin charged. Alara sidestepped, slashing at his weapon arm. He roared in pain, but didn't drop his gun. They circled each other, 2 trained killers in a dance as old as warfare. "You can't stop this," Torvin growled. "Even if you kill me, the charges are armed. Remote detonation. My people outside will trigger them. Your people?" Alara smiled grimly. "You mean the Void collective cell that intelligence rolled up 6 hours ago? Your backup isn't coming, Torvin. No one's triggering anything. You're alone." Uncertainty flickered across his face. She'd lied partially. 1 cell had been captured, but others remained active. But doubt was a weapon sharper than any blade dot in that moment of hesitation. She struck. A kick to his knee, collapsing his stance. A strike to his wrist, finally dislodging the weapon. A final blow to his solar plexus that left him gasping on the deck. "Stay down," she commanded, already moving toward the ship's engineering section. "Cale, I need you." He appeared beside her instantly, having handed off evacuation coordination to the ship's crew. "What do you need?" "Your smuggling expertise." "Those charges, where would you hide them for maximum damage?" Cale's eyes went distant, calculating. Engineering core, fuel lines, and ... the life support junction. Take out those 3 points. The ship's structural integrity fails catastrophically. Then we split up. I'll take engineering. You take life support. We've got, she checked her chronometer, 9 minutes. Alara, I don't know how to disarm military explosives. She pressed her palm to his cheek, holding his gaze. You don't have to disarm them. Just detach them and space them through the emergency airlocks. Can you do that? He covered her hand with his, turning his face to kiss her palm. For you? Anything. They ran in opposite directions, racing against a clock that counted down toward oblivion. Behind them, Captain Vallis coordinated the evacuation, his crew performing with exceptional bravery, and somewhere in the darkness, Torvin Crossed dragged himself toward a hidden communicator, determined to destroy them all, even if it meant his own death. The Dawnbreaker's fate hung by a thread, and that thread was held by a spy who'd found something worth living for, and a reformed smuggler who discovered his redemption in her eyes. New Horizon Seller's hands flew over the explosive device attached to the engineering core, her training taking over despite the adrenaline flooding her system. 6 minutes remained. The charge was sophisticated military-grade plasma detonator with anti-tamper protocols. One wrong move, and it would trigger instantly. Come on, she muttered, bypassing the secondary circuit. Just a little more? Her earpiece crackled. Life support charges detached and spaced, Cale reported, breathing hard. 2 down. Where's the third? Fuel lines lower deck, Ilara responded, carefully separating the final wire. I've almost got engineering. Can you reach it in 4 minutes? Watch me. The explosive disengaged with a soft click. Ilara ripped it free, sprinted to the nearest airlock, and jettisoned it into space. Through the porthole, she watched it tumble away into the void, harmless. 2 down, 1 to go. She ran toward the lower deck, taking stairs 3 at a time. Her shoulder throbbed where Torvin had thrown her, but pain was irrelevant. Only the mission mattered. Only an explosion rocked the ship, not the fuel lines. Somewhere else, Kale. She screamed into her cone. Kale, respond. Static. Then, weakly, I'm okay. Bastard had a backup charge hidden in the galley. Went off early. I'm trapped in the corridor by debris. Get the fuel line charge. Don't worry about me. Like hell, Ilara snarled, changing direction. She found him pinned beneath a collapsed bulkhead panel, his leg twisted at an unnatural angle. Blood streaked his face from a gash above his eyebrow. But he was alive, conscious, and pointing frantically toward the fuel line access hatch. 3 minutes, he gasped. Go. Save the ship. Ilara dropped beside him instead, her hands finding his face. We're getting out of this together. Both of us, you understand me? Ilara. Together, she repeated fiercely, and kissed him hard. It was a promise, a prayer, a refusal to accept any other outcome. She stood, grabbed the panel pinning him, and lifted with every ounce of strength she possessed. A metal groaned, shifted. Kale pulled himself free, crying out in pain but moving. She helped him to the wall, then sprinted for the fuel line hatch. 2 minutes. The charge sat nestled against the primary fuel junction, its timer display counting down in harsh red numerals. Ilara's hands trembled, not from fear, but from the knowledge that one mistake would vaporize them all. Talk to me, she said into her cum, needing to hear Kale's voice. Tell me something true. I'm falling in love with you, Kale said without hesitation. Have been since you accepted that drink in the observation lounge. Thought you should know, in case. No, in case, Ilara interrupted, her fingers working frantically. We're going to have that date. We're going to have dozens of dates. You're going to tell me every smuggling story, and I'm going to pretend to be shocked. We're going to... The final wire disconnected. The timer froze at 0:47. Lave, she finished, laughing with relief and residual terror. She grabbed the charge, stumbled to the nearest airlock, and sent it spinning into space. Then she collapsed against the wall, sliding down until she sat on the cold deck, her body shaking. Ilara? Kale's voice was worried. Did you? It's done, she said. We're safe. The ship is safe. She heard his sob of relief, matched by her own. 14 hours later, the Dawnbreaker limped into Titan Station under military escort. The evacuation pods had been recovered, all passengers accounted for. Torvin crossed, and his remaining crew were in custody, bound for maximum security detention. Captain Vallis had already submitted commendations for both Ilara and Kale in the station's medical bay. Ilara sat beside Kale's bed, holding his hand while doctors finished treating his fractured leg. The station's Saturn-facing windows showed the planet's magnificent rings, golden and eternal. Your debriefing went well? Kale asked, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. As well as can be expected when you deviate from protocol to save a smuggler. Ilara replied with a small smile. My handler wasn't pleased. But the operation was successful, so she can't complain too much. And your next assignment? Ilara was quiet for a moment, watching the rings rotate slowly beyond the glass. She'd received her orders an hour ago. Deep cover operation. 6 months minimum, dangerous and isolating. The kind of mission she'd accepted without hesitation dozens of times before. But everything was different now. I requested a transfer, she said softly, to Tactical Operations Coordination. It's still intelligence work, but based on stations rather than undercover. Less travel. More ... stability. Kale's eyes widened. Alara, you don't have to change your whole life because I'm not changing it because of you, she interrupted, squeezing his hand. I'm changing it for us. There's a difference. She leaned closer, her free hand touching his face. You said you were falling in love with me. I need you to know I'm already there, completely. And I want to see where this goes without wondering if each mission is the one I don't come back from. His expression transformed. Hope and joy and disbelief mixing together. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything. She kissed him gently, carefully, mindful of his injuries. Besides, they need someone to coordinate operations in the outer colonies. And I hear there's an excellent mineral trader who knows every station in the system. Might be useful to have his expertise on call. Kale laughed, then winced as the movement pulled his injuries. So I'm your informant now? You're my partner, Alara corrected. In every sense of the word. If you want to be. I want everything with you, Kale said simply. He pulled her closer, their foreheads touching. Every adventure, every quiet moment, every challenge, all of it. They sat like that for a long time, watching Saturn's rings turn through the window. Two people who'd found each other in the most impossible circumstances and decided to build something real from the chaos. A week later, they boarded a small transport together, heading for Europa Station, where Alara would begin her new position. Their hands were intertwined, their luggage stored together. Their futures no longer separate paths, but a single journey they'd chosen to walk side by side. As the transport departed Titan Station, Kale turned to Alara with a grin. So about that date you promised me, ... The one we never got to have on the Dawnbreaker? Alara smiled. I'm thinking dinner. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere with absolutely no hijackers, explosives, or life-threatening situations. Sounds perfect, Kale murmured, kissing her temple. Though I have to say, our first date was pretty memorable. Our second one will be better, Alara promised. And our third. And every one after that. Through the viewport, the stars stretched endlessly, full of possibility and promise. Behind them, the Dawnbreaker was already being repaired, ready to carry new passengers on new journeys. But for Alara Chun and Kale Draven, the greatest journey was just beginning. Not through space, but through life. Together, and in the vast darkness between worlds, that was the greatest adventure of all. The end.